Welcome, foolish mortals, to Disney Coast to Coast. I'm here to introduce your host, your Disney Coast to Coast host. Kindly raise your volume, please. Jeff has plenty of Disney chatter for everyone. There's no turning back now.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and today on the show I have my friend Aaron Wallace joining me, the author of the Disney Thinking Fans Guide, as well as the host of the podcast On Main Street. Hello, Aaron. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jeff. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. It's my favorite time of year. Yay.
Yeah.
It's been a wild one. Has it been a good Halloween season for you thus far?
It's always a good Halloween season. It is impossible to live in the Central Florida area near Walt Disney World and not have a great Halloween season.
Exactly. And same thing in Southern California. It's wonderful. We are indeed coast to coast today with you over by Walt Disney World. So in any case, we're here to talk about, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party has a new Halloween fireworks show. So we're going to jump into that conversation right now.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Okay, so over at Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, we have the Disney's Not So Spooky Spectacular. And right off the bat, I just want to talk about the title of this show, because it looks like you have a thought. You jumped out of your seat a little bit about this.
Well, I think it's a great title. I think it was smart of them to not call it the Not So Scary fireworks show, because you don't want to have a new show that's also the title of the event itself. I feel like it would get a little lost in the mix.
Yeah, the thing that I find interesting about these nighttime spectacular titles now is they always used to have the words fireworks spectacular in them.
Yeah.
And now they're dropping the word fireworks. And I just find that interesting. And accurately so, because I definitely think these shows are much more focused on projection than fireworks. But at the same time, it makes me really sad. Like, these aren't fireworks spectaculars anymore.
No, it's true. And I do think that to an even greater extent than, say, Happily Ever After, this is a show that really keeps your attention on the projections, almost to the point that the bursts stay in your periphery the entire time unless you remind yourself to look up, because there is very much a storyline unfolding on the castle walls. And so you feel like you're watching a cartoon.
Yeah, and now previously, the show for many, many years was called Happy Hallowishes, and they never really, through the years, they had lighting projection on the castle and shapes and stuff like that, but they never went the map projection way. And actually, how long has Wishes been gone? Just like good old Wishes in the park.
Oh my gosh, when did it leave?
A few years ago at this point,
yeah.
right?
4 years ago?
Yeah, so even after Wishes was gone, Happy Hallowishes was still coming every Halloween. And that's, obviously it was a play on the name of the normal daily fireworks show. So it was a little weird to still have Happy Hallowishes, and the technology was getting, antiquated in the sense that it wasn't map projection. And it was time for change, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as much as I love Wishes and that whole generation of shows, it definitely now feels like a previous generation of shows. It does that disembodied voice in the sky thing that Wishes was so famous for. In the Disney home video fan community, we used to complain about Disney home video covers that would have these floating heads in the sky. Like, have you ever noticed, like, the 2000s?
Like in the clouds or something?
There'd always just be, like, characters' heads, and that would be the whole DVD cover, and it was always like, where's their body? And Wishes, the fireworks show, feels like the nighttime equivalent of that.
They were paying tribute to the VHS covers. That's funny. Yeah. That's not something I had ever picked up on or noticed before, but that's a funny thing. But I do picture the Beauty and the Beast one. I remember Beast's head like being in the clouds, I believe. Yeah, it was weird. In any case, this show, first of all, I just want to start off by saying I really enjoyed this show. We're going to get very nitpicky here. And, there are some things that I find to be strange choices. But overall, I really enjoyed the show. How did you feel overall?
I agree. I loved it. I was amazed by it. I was confused by it. It was a whole emotional experience, but overall, I would definitely say that I'm a fan.
Yeah, so please know that going in. We're both fans of this show. It's just like, as Disney nerds, we nitpick stuff. So that's what we're here for. But I will say that, boom, the show starts with a bang. Like, it's just, which I don't feel like is super common for the nighttime spectaculars. I feel like there's this gradual like buildup of sound and lights dimming and stuff, and this was just like boom, we're in it.
You're right, it is. Though I do want to mention one thing that happens in the moments leading up to that big bang, as you say, which is that there are just these very brief flashes for about 15 minutes prior to showtime of gargoyles who take over the castle walls, but it only lasts seriously like less than 2 seconds at a time. And our friend Albert was there with us, and he kept missing the gargoyles. And we're like, Albert, you got to watch for them the next time. And then they'd be there and be gone, and he'd miss them again. So it's really that quick. But each time it just lent itself to this spooky ambiance in the castle hub.
I'm really happy that you picked up on those gargoyles because, interestingly enough, I was talking to somebody who worked on this and did the animation for this, and I was like, hey, are there any little secrets or anything I should keep my eye out for? And he mentioned the gargoyles. He goes, I don't know if anybody will catch it because they're so brief and they're just like enlightening. And so it's cool that you picked up on that. And as you said, it is part of the pre-show. So I actually didn't see it because I should preface this by saying I am in California, so I watched this online, whereas you were actually there and saw it in person. So obviously that makes a bit of a difference. But I'm glad that you picked up on those gargoyles that my friend worked on. That's cool.
Yeah, I hope more people do, because even if you just catch it out of the corner of your eye, it's like, whoa, what did that just happen?
Yeah, and that's the best. Those are my favorite types of things, is when it's like, did I just see what I think I saw? So cool. So, of course, this show starts with This Is Halloween, which is, I guess, the unofficial Halloween anthem of Disney now, right? I think that's a fair statement.
I guess it is. It probably should be I Put a Spell on You, but we'll take This As Halloween.
Should it, though? I mean, really, and don't, you know my love of Hocus Pocus, and I know yours, so I'm not challenging you on this, but I Put a Spell on You was an existing song. This Is Halloween was written for a Disney movie, and it actually has the word Halloween in it. So if I had to pick, I'd go with This Is Halloween.
Yeah, no, I won't take anything away from This Is Halloween. It does have the effect in this show, I think, of establishing immediately that this is going to be principally The Nightmare Before Christmas fireworks show, at least in its like bookended framework. Yeah,
and Zero is seen throughout, so that's kind of the through line. Because we see Jack at the beginning and end. In fact, we'll get to that during This Is Halloween. We see a very cool, and actually, before we get to this, where were you standing when you saw this?
So I was in the castle hub, just to the left of the castle. So pretty good view straight on.
Like in front of or behind partners?
Sort of off to the side of partners.
Okay, cool. So you were pretty close. So you probably had no problem seeing this Jack Skellington puppet, which was very cool.
Very cool. And let me tell you, I knew that there was going to be a Jack Skellington puppet, and I don't know, that didn't create, like, that expectation created no visual in my mind, so I just really had no expectation. But whatever I thought I might see, still, when that thing walked out, I mean, it was one of those rare moments as a sort of hardened Disney fan where you were transported back to childhood, and you just have that moment of, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's really visually arresting.
It was a very, very, very cool puppet. It's basically one of those puppets. We've seen them in parades before. It's not trickery in a way like how they do that. It's trickery in a way of like, I know how they did that and I'm still so impressed, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's his size. He's enormous. And then the lighting makes it look like, I mean, you understand conceptually that there is someone behind him, and eventually your eyes kind of focus and you can make out the silhouette of someone behind him. But when he first walks out, it looks like an enormous Jack Skellington is moving on his own.
Yes. So it's probably about 10 or 12 feet high, right? Because I would say so. Yeah, I could see the operator's head at about his waist, and then it was about double that. So I'd say between 10 and 12 feet tall. And, it's strapped onto the front of a puppeteer, it's kind of like the opposite of a backpack, I would say. Kind of like if you've seen Olaf or Miguel in the parks, whereas that's only up to the performer's waist. This, like, goes above his head. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. And you know what it was?
Tapestry of Nations, right?
That's a great example. Tapestry of Nations. Yes.
At Epcot, for that parade, they had these giant puppets. Yeah.
But when he walked out, it was that thing of the whole crowd kind of going, ooh.
Yeah.
Like taken aback. It reminded me of, again, the scene in Hocus Pocus when the Sanderson sisters first appear at the party and everyone's sort of having a good time and then they're shocked and fall to a hush. Like, it had that effect when he walked out.
Yeah, and I will say the mannerisms on his face, his facial features were fantastic and just really well done. And, they use the black light effectively because, so much of Jack Skellington is white that shining black light on him really makes him visible and hides the puppeteer. And beautifully done, beautifully moved. I was curious, though, is like, how far reaching is this effect in the park? And I watched a couple videos. One was front row, so you're right there so that I could really see the puppet. And one was far away. And even when it was far away, now granted, the camera did zoom in when Jack came out, but I was like, oh no, it seems visible pretty far.
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's something I'd like to, for a number of reasons, I'd like to experience this show from different vantage points on Main Street because, something people often say about Happily Ever After is that it's a different show in the hub versus back in Town Square versus sort of in the middle. You get different experiences, and I imagine that might be true with this as well.
Yeah, so it was cool. I will say once again, though, I don't understand this because this is not a difficult voice to match. But I don't think whoever they have doing Jack Skellington, because it's the same thing here at Disneyland, I think it's a pretty weak voice match. And I understand they're not going to get Danny Elfman to be doing these theme park shows. He's a pretty busy guy, I'm sure. But I don't know, does it take you out of it at all? Because it's always jarring to me.
Yeah, I mean, I get over it pretty quickly, but there is that initial moment of like, oh, that's not Jack Skellington.
I guess it's modern day Jack Skellington, I guess.
Yeah.
It's weird. But in any case, a very cool puppet that begins and ends the show. And kind of, like you said, I think it made more of an impression than I expected it to. Because I always get very nervous when it's the type of thing that I'm like, okay, this sounds like only the first few rows are really going to get to enjoy this. But it seems to have worked. But in any case, moving on from there, we get this Trick or Treat song. And the map projection goes into this whole Candy Castle mode. I'm just curious. I had a little bit of PTSD here. Did you?
Well, look, we have seen the castle turned into a cake in one form or another many different times through different projections. Then, of course, the infamous plastic build of a cake atop the castle in the 90s. What I appreciated about this design is that it managed to do that in a completely different way. So there are cupcakes instead of traditional cake, and then there's also like candy corn and wrapped candies that are all sort of part of the cake. And then this song that plays at Trick or Treat, of course, is from the iconic Donald Duck cartoon short, which I love, and I love that song. So it's great to see it getting some recognition in this way. But it talks about candies and things like that. So yeah, I like that they found a new way to approach the classic castle cake.
Yeah, it was. I did immediately think of the 25th anniversary Castle Cake when I saw it. And I was like, how sad. I mean, trust me, there are many, many, many people out there who, that was a long time ago at this point. We're almost 25 years ago. So I guess 23 at this point. And there's a lot of people who don't even know about that. But oh gosh, if you knew
what a chapter.
It made an impression on you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wild.
You know what? I'm waiting for the day, like now that we've sort of had the castle cake recreated in different ways via projection, I'm waiting for the day that we get Stitch's toilet papering of the castle recreated.
Oh gosh, that was, you mean through map projection?
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they decided to do a Stitch show or have a show involving Stitch. In fact, could have been this, right? Like Stitch's little villain character could have been part of, I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe we'll see it again someday.
Walt Disney World will never give up on Stitch.
Yeah. It seems, he seems to be quite successful. I guess it's overseas. They really love, I mean, I know the attraction wasn't super successful, but people love that character. People freak out whenever they see that character.
Yeah.
Still to this day at Mickey and the Magical Map at Disneyland, when they hear the music from Lilo and Stitch and he pops his little head out, people go crazy. And I'm always amazed by it.
Yeah, and he has a meet and greet during the Halloween party where he is Stitch as Elvis.
Oh, cute. Fun times. Cool. So after the Candy Castle and the Trick or Treat song, we are introduced to Mickey and the gang here, and they're kind of throughout the projection show, which I think is kind of cool. I liked the fact that they were telling the story or part of the story, but I am curious, is this a new Minnie Mouse voice since the passing of Rusey?
Yeah, my good friend Blake Taylor, who writes for WW Radio and Rotoscopers, is like a pro at spotting voice actors, especially like the Fab Five. And so one of his immediate takeaways was, I don't think that's Rusey Taylor. I've read some sort of unofficial news sites who say that it is Rusey Taylor, but I think maybe they're just assuming that it's her. To me, it doesn't sound like her. Presumably this would have been recorded before she passed away, but I'm wondering if maybe she had already, she'd already taken ill and we just didn't know.
Yeah, a similar situation with the show at the Oogie Boogie Bash. I forget the name of the show, but it's in the Disney Junior Theater. And I think it's called Mickey's Trick or Treat. And I've seen similar comments about that on social media about how it's not Rusey. And I will say, actually, when I was watching that show, it didn't hit me. Although it very well may be, but when I was watching this fireworks show, it did. I was like, I don't think it's Rusey. But like you said, these things are so far in advance. In fact, like last year, was it, or 2 years ago when we had that whole World of Color Villainous, the voice actor announcing it before it even happened. Like that was 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
So it very well could be. I don't know the official answer, but it did sound a bit different to me. And oftentimes there are last minute changes with these shows as well. So,
right.
So
it could be that. And it could also be, maybe she was just sounding different. She's getting a little older. Maybe if she was falling ill, maybe her voice just sounded different.
Yeah. Now, one of the coolest map projection effects in the whole show to me was in this moment when they made the castle look like a haunted house. I thought this was beautiful.
Yeah, because it is both the Cinderella castle that we know and love, and yet also very much an iconic haunted house. And they have this wonderful way of sort of slanting all of the walls in at an angle, and then like the bricks are replaced by what looks like kind of like wood paneling that's very like faded and sort of everything's at odd angles. But yeah, it really works.
It's really impressive to me what map projection can do as far as movement is concerned, because you are looking at a stable Cinderella castle there, and I love how with shadows and just like warping of the image and such, it really sometimes looks like pieces of that building are moving, and that, the further away you are, like the more impressive that effect is. But I've always loved that about map projection, and it's incredible.
It's almost like they're able to build a Halloween version of Cinderella Castle and just drop it in place of the castle for this one show.
Honestly, if they could, if it was dark enough to project that all day long, they quite possibly could as a decoration, it's kind of cool that way. It's interesting because like sometimes I get tired of it. I'm like, it's a little bit overused. But then sometimes I see effects like that haunted house one where I'm like, oh man, like you showed me something kind of new here, and it excites me.
Yeah, I would say overall this show has at least some of the best projection mapping I have seen in a while.
And it looked super clear. And like I said, I saw it on video, so I don't know if, maybe it was just a really good high quality camera or something. But sometimes in person, map projection, it's not the clearest image. The video I saw, I was like, this looks super clear. I don't know if they're new projectors or what, but it looked great.
I would agree, yeah.
So in any case, we move on to the skeleton dance, which I love this. This is such a classic Walt Disney short. And I love the fact that it was represented. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people know, but they don't really know what it's from.
Yeah, this whole sequence for me is
sequence I have issues with. I have issues with the sequence, but I love the fact that there is skeleton dance representation.
Yeah, like barely though. It's a skeleton dance, but is it the skeleton dance, the short? I think the nod is intended, but it's only that for a hot second before it becomes something else.
Yeah, so we got the music, we got dun 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 for a very short period of time, but then for some reason it goes into "I've Got No Strings on Me" from Pinocchio. And I was confused.
Before that, it's Silly Song from Snow White.
Oh, yes.
And then I've Got No Strings from Pinocchio. And then Step in Time from Mary Poppins. Listen, a number of things need to be said about this sequence. First, it's very long. Like, I'm so on board with this show, and then this thing happens, and it's kind of like, oh, wait, what? And then, oh, this is still happening. And it just keeps going with this extended medley of non-Halloween Disney songs.
Yeah, at first, I was like, okay, is this tying into villains somehow? I've got no strings on me. I'm like, so Stromboli was kind of forcing him to do that show. And then I was like, no, this doesn't make sense because we've got Mary Poppins. I'm like, I don't know. It was bizarre, for sure. The only through line for this sequence was the fact that they were using, I think it was xylophones and making kind of like that bone rattling musical noise. And I was like, okay, so that's the connection with the skeleton dance, is that they took these non-Halloween Disney songs and used xylophones. So
yes, because in a minute we're going to talk about another example of a non-Halloween Disney song that is transported to sound very spooky in its arrangement.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with these, other than, as you say, the xylophones sort of sounding like bone slapping together. It was very much a traditional, non-spooky arrangement of each of these three songs. So just a very strange creative choice.
Yeah, and the whole thing was supposed to be something that the Mickey and the gang encountered in this haunted house. So, I mean, it makes sense in the fact that, okay, they'd run into a skeleton perhaps. But yeah, the song choices were baffling to me. And I don't know. To me, there were just certain points of the show that just weren't Halloweeny enough. And I'm like, okay, well, they call it a not so spooky show. So I guess maybe that's their justification of, well, not everything in it's going to be Halloweeny or spooky. But I'm like, well, then it's not a Halloween show, but it is.
Yeah, I know. Well, Disney has a song called Spooky Scary Skeletons, which is very bouncy and fun and playful and non-threatening. It comes from, I think, like a Winnie the Pooh TV short. So it's very child-friendly, and I think it would have fit this sequence perfectly. And they do play it as part of the background loop at the party, so they're aware of this song. And I thought that was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, so, skeleton dance portion, it's interesting. And then we move on to something that I think is even more interesting, because we start hearing Someday My Prince Will Come in like a minor key. And, this is, I always find it interesting when they play with these things, of course, if it makes sense, like in Haunted Mansion Holiday, when we get to the graveyard and they play all that Christmas music and the minor keys and the modulated keys, and it sounds creepy and warped and stuff. And I think that that's fun when it makes sense, like it does in Haunted Mansion Holiday. But what do we got? Someday My Prince Will Come, Beauty and the Beast, and Once Upon a Dream in this sequence.
Yes.
And they end up in a ballroom, I guess, in this haunted house, which is very reminiscent of Haunted Mansion, which is cool. But then there's zero Haunted Mansion reference musically, which is shocking to me. And at the same time, I will give them credit, because I am one who says, they have this huge music library. They always use the same thing, and let's face it, with the Halloween show, they always use Haunted Mansion, but it works and makes sense, so it was bizarre that they didn't.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I had exactly the same thought. If you're going to go so far as to all but project a scene from the Haunted Mansion up on the castle walls, why not use some of that music? But you know what it also reminded me of is one of the projection shows that happens here at Hogwarts Castle, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So much so that it almost seemed like the Imagineers saw that, or some executive saw that and said, hey, do that on our castle. So I thought that was an interesting little bit of borrowing from Universal.
You're talking about the Dark Art show, or?
Yeah, so we've had a number of different shows here, and I can't recall which one, but one of them does have like dancing, waltzing ghosts.
Okay, cool. Well, but then I think one would argue, did Harry Potter steal that from the Haunted Mansion?
That's fair.
So, but in any case, it doesn't really matter. But Beauty and the Beast especially, that song in the minor key was kind of like, as a music fan, I enjoyed it. I was like, this is really warped. But at the same time, like, why is this part of this show?
Yeah. So it starts with Minnie Mouse inside the haunted house, and she says, wait, I hear this strange but familiar music coming from this room, or something like that. And we hear Someday My Prince Will Come, but it's playing on like a staticky, like 1940s radio. So already like this sequence compared to the skeleton sequence works for me a little more, because they are making the effort to situate these familiar Disney songs in like a Halloween musical setting. But yeah, still a strange choice. I don't know.
basically they're saying that even after you're dead, you're still a fan of Disney music. It never leaves you.
I guess so. By the way, this reminds me of an interesting point with this show and castle shows in general. I'm always fascinated by the Disney properties that Mickey and Minnie do and do not know. So, like in the Mickey's Royal Friendship Fair, like they're very aware of Arendelle. Like Minnie has heard so much about Anna and Elsa's story, can't wait to meet them. But in this show, they see the dog Zero, and they're like, "What's this? It's a ghost dog? Who's this? Oh, look, his collar says Zero." But then once they're inside the castle, Minnie knows the song "Someday My Prince Will Come." So it's very interesting. They have like a partial awareness of their own catalog.
That is an interesting point I never thought of. And I know the answer to it.
Okay.
Here's the answer. Mickey and Minnie and the gang know it only if it was originally released as a Walt Disney picture. So Nightmare Before Christmas was originally a Touchstone picture. So they're not familiar with that. They're not familiar with Marvel or Star Wars, only if it was a Walt Disney picture.
Okay.
I just made that up, but
I like it. It works for me.
No, that's an interesting point, and one that, frankly, I'm surprised I never thought of, because it's that kind of stupid little stuff that drives me crazy. But she was like, "Oh, his name tag says Zero," and yeah, that's funny. Now I'm gonna notice that constantly now. Thanks for putting that into my mind. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. But you know, if this like, having now seen this second sequence with non-Disney or non-Halloween Disney songs, if they had made the same effort with the skeleton sequence, I think I could sit with this whole show and feel okay about it. But now, like, I'm especially bothered by the skeleton sequence not making that effort, since this latter sequence does.
What's the different? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
So as you were saying, like having this whole creepy vibe, like the music in this second sequence with Beauty and the Beast and Someday My Prince Will Come, it all sounds very spooky. It's in a minor key, as you say. It's played on an organ, whereas it's just a straight up jazz number in the skeleton sequence.
So the bones playing the music isn't scary enough for you. That's really
no. I don't think so.
But that's where they're coming from, right?
Yeah,
that's the bones sequence, and then this is the modulation sequence. So overall, just some interesting musical choices. Not saying they weren't like beautiful. It just wasn't. It's not a Halloween show, and it doesn't belong as part of a Halloween show in my mind. And after that whole sequence, Minnie Mouse says, "This place isn't spooky after all," and I'm just like, it's a Halloween show, but it's called Not So Spooky, so they had to throw that in there. So we finally get to the villains, and the choice of villains here is really interesting to me. We had Oogie Boogie, Hades, Ursula, and the Queen of Hearts as the focused on villains. So none of the classics, those are classics, don't get me wrong, but no Maleficent, no Evil Queen, some of the ones we're used to seeing. And I actually thought this was great because of that. Ursula, I guess we do see a lot, but she's my favorite, so I'm not going to complain. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was interesting because to me, I was like, oh, this is the all generations of villains. So we have the kids that grew up around, my age, who Oogie Boogie and Ursula are the ones that we love. And then a bit later on, a bit of a later generation is the Hades fans. And then the parents in the audience are, the older folks are going to be like, oh, Queen of Hearts, I recognize her. So I thought it was interesting in that way.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, it's a nice assortment. And yeah, given that we have villain sequences elsewhere, and that like Maleficent usually, and rightfully so, is the star of those, for a special event, it's nice to go a different direction. I think this is also the obligatory big top sequence in a castle projection mapped show.
Okay.
I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, I loved this because of my love of haunts and haunted houses. And that's just what it brought me down to. So, what we're talking about is if you've ever seen, especially, if you saw It, the recent movie of It, where they go to the carnival, It Chapter 2, they go to the carnival and you've got that classic fun house with the giant clown head and you walk into his mouth. They basically created that for each of these villains on the castle. And visually, I was like, this is super cool. And it just made me want each of those houses in Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. I was like, can we make this happen, please?
I agree. The shot of Ursula as that giant clown head that you walk through, they could leave that up all night long as a projection, and that would make me very happy. It's extremely stylized. And same thing with the Queen of Hearts. You've never seen these characters look quite like this before, and so it's very cool.
Yeah, something with the Queen of Hearts this year, though. I feel like she's not someone that usually gets that much representation, but not only is she in this, but then she's very much focused in Villains Grove, as I've talked about on a previous episode over at Disney California Adventure. I don't know. What's with the Queen of Hearts resurgence?
Well, I don't know. I just hope maybe Imagineering is starting to move out of their Helena Bonham Carter phase when it comes to the Queen of Hearts, and we're getting back to the classic Queen of Hearts, maybe.
Now, that's an interesting point, because at the Oogie Boogie Bash at DCA, we had Tim Burton Mad Hatter for one of the trick-or-treat trails, but then we had, well, I mean, we didn't really see her, but to me, it was very much the animated Queen of Hearts in Villains Grove. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah. When I went to Hong Kong Disneyland for Halloween a couple years ago, and they do like full-fledged haunts, like a haunted house that's actually quite scary with Disney characters. And you go from room to room with different villains. And one of the villains, quote unquote, is the live action Mad Hatter. And it's very similar to what you guys have at Oogie Boogie Bash. And I think, in the movie, that character is not a villain per se, but he's very quirky. And so it's interesting and very effective, I think, the way they translate him into this menacing, scary kind of figure, because he's essentially a clown, so it works.
Interesting. So the villain sequence I thought was really cool. Did you catch the song that was playing in the background here? I think it was here. It might have been right after.
I don't know. What do you know? What is it?
Court of Miracles from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I did not pick up on that.
Oh my goodness. That was playing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get my Frollo, but I got my Hunchback reference. And
okay, that's cool.
Like, go back and listen, because
yeah, I'm going to.
I was so shocked, and at first it was like, this is familiar. What is it? It was like, oh my gosh, they're playing Hunchback. And it made me very happy. It was such a cool moment. And yeah, the villain scene was honestly kind of short for a Halloween show.
Yeah, well, you know what happens is, so we see those four characters, giant faces, the four villains, and then they go away, and the rest of the villain sequence is Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy running away from oversized weapons that are purportedly being swung by the villains, which, again, is sort of an odd creative choice. I would have maybe preferred to have spent a little more time with the villains themselves.
Yeah, you know what I was a little surprised with the choice of Mickey and the gang in this, and I'm happy about it, but I am a little surprised. I would have expected this Mickey and the gang to have been more like the Shorts characters.
Well, yeah, so one of my takeaways from this whole fireworks show is that it felt like watching a new traditionally animated Mickey Mouse short film, which is something we don't get so much anymore, traditionally in the sense of like Mickey's traditional appearance.
Yeah, it was not like Mickey's and Minnie's Runaway Railway or the shorts that they put out now. And I was expecting that, not only because they seem to be pushing that a little bit because of the attraction opening, but also that just kind of seems... does the circumstances and the situations that this story put them in felt like one of those shorts to me. So I was it was a surprising choice. I think maybe they had the hindsight of being like, you know what, this show's probably going to be around for 15 years, and who knows whether or not Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway will be popular and or how long those shorts will be around. Maybe they were smart enough to think that. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I almost wonder if the long-term plan is when you're in Magic Kingdom, the traditional Mickey Mouse is the Mickey Mouse. But when you're in Hollywood Studios, the new Mickey Mouse is the Mickey Mouse.
That would make sense. I don't think it'll change for meet and greets at Disney's Hollywood Studios or anything, but that's interesting. I kind of hate the fact that we have to even have this conversation of like there being more than one Mickey Mouse, but that's the reality we live in. So in any case, so the villains thing was super, super cool. Court of Miracles was amazing. The show goes back to that trick-or-treat song with a This Is Halloween medley and the return of Jack Skellington. This I always find funny, and I get it, they're bookending it, but I always find it funny when like a 13-minute show will be like, let me remind you of how this started because it was so long ago. It's like flashbacks at the end of a 2-hour movie where sometimes you need that little reminder. I'm like, I don't need to remember 13 minutes ago. We're just there.
Yeah. You know what I appreciate is that often with these fireworks shows, it's just build, 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 and then big finale. But with this, because there's a story within a story, we get a happy ending. So before Jack Skellington comes out to say Happy Halloween and presents the big giant burst that end the show, we get to see Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy escape from the haunted house and have that moment of, shoo, we survived, we made it, yay, let's go trick-or-treating, and then they sing their song and they march off with a very charming little cadence as they walk down their version of a spooky Main Street. But yeah, it's nice to get like a happy ending within a fireworks show prior to the finale.
Yeah, so this was a nice plus to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, and it was a good show. I really enjoyed even just watching it online. I was like, this is fun. I look forward to seeing it in person one of these years. So I thought it was a nice addition. And between that and now the Hocus Pocus show, I'm like, okay, they got some heavy hitters at this party now.
Yeah, I think across the board they have plussed this year's Not So Scary. They've done these attraction overlays that are exclusive to the party. Space Mountain, Pirates of the Caribbean. They had done those in the past, but they plussed them a little bit this year.
Okay, I want to hear about that. How did they plus them? Because I did experience Pirates last year, and I got to be honest, it was extremely underwhelming to me. So how did they plus it this year?
Yeah, I appreciated it for what it was last year, but I do think that was the general consensus, is that it was underwhelming. And part of the problem was they had tried to shoehorn a narrative into Pirates of the Caribbean that was exclusive to this party. So I think the story was like there was this renegade pirate who other pirates were searching for, and we were supposed to help them find him or something like that. But it just didn't quite work. There were only like 2 or 3 actors for the whole experience, and the story was never very clear. And it's like, I'm all about having a story experience, but if you're going to do it, you've got to kind of commit to it and give it a budget and a through line. And so all of that was lacking last year. I think they realized that this year and just did away with that. And so the concept of Pirates of the Caribbean this year at the party is more about, it's the ride that you know and love, but just there's some extra atmosphere. Just there are pirates here, pirates there. There are more actors. There are pirates who appear in a greater number of scenes. And each time you encounter them, they're just kind of like interacting with the scenery. They're making funny remarks on a microphone. And so there isn't this story, this shoehorn story anymore.
And they put more actors in there?
Yes, quite a few more actors. It feels like every couple of minutes or every minute in the ride, you're encountering a new character.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. And like, honestly, I kind of expected that. Last year felt very much like a test to me of putting actors in it. Does this work? And so I was lenient toward that and accepting of that. I just, I'm happy to see that it was indeed a test, and they're like, okay, this works. Let's really commit to it now.
Yeah.
And Space Mountain, how did they change that? Because from what I understand, it was just like essentially change the soundtrack and shut off the lights. So how do you plus that?
Well, it's that again, but the soundtrack is the thing. So last year it was really like heavy metal, super hard rock music, which just seemed like a strange choice. That isn't inherently Halloween-y, nor is it my particular favorite genre. And so this year they've swapped that out with very ethereal, spooky music.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it just, it now feels like much more of a Halloween experience.
Cool. Did Mad Tea Party, I know that they had some new music and lighting last year. Do you know if that changed at all this year?
So my friends and I, we did ride that, and we were noticing some pretty elaborate, an elaborate apparatus up on the roof of Mad Tea Party with these swinging lights that we had not noticed before, but I could not tell you for sure whether those were there previously.
Okay, cool. And then I hope you did this because it was brand new. Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor did something new.
Yeah, so the way this works is normally this is a show with a beginning and end, right? Like you enter, they close the doors, you take your seat, you're there for the duration of the show, then you get up and exit. During the Halloween party, it was just a constantly running show with doors open on either end and trick-or-treat stations running through. So you could pass through, grab your candy, and if you wanted to, stop and watch the show for a while, or just kind of see it in passing, get your candy and go. And all of the jokes were kind of like Halloween themed. The projections behind the on-screen characters were like candy wrappers and things like that. To me, this is a much better way to run this attraction in general, because I don't think it's strong enough to justify 25 minutes of precious vacation time. But as a sort of pass through, like, oh, I caught 2 minutes of this. I heard a monster joke. I'm good to go. It worked for me.
That's cool. I like that. I didn't realize that's how they were doing it. Did it feel like there was actual interaction with performers, or was it all pre-programmed?
No, yeah, there was interaction, and I would say about half the theater was full when I passed through of people actually sitting down. And yeah, they were doing the thing they always do with attendants taking the camera and the microphone over to a particular person in the audience. That person would stand up. They'd exchange jokes with the on-screen characters.
That's great. I actually really love that. That sounds even better than I thought it would be. So that's cool. Now, you did mention there was a trick-or-treat trail in there, so you go and you get your candy and you move on, and that's just kind of something to see as you pass. And I had talked about how here at Disneyland, they brought the characters into the trails, which I loved. And now that you've gone, did you see that anywhere else?
I didn't see characters on any trails. I mean, there's the usual thing of characters at dance parties. There was a couple of roam around characters, but at least the trails that I made it to didn't have characters stationed there.
I really like the idea of the trails having something other than just collecting candy, which is great. I love collecting candy, but I don't know. I just think it gives you even more reason to get in that queue, which they're always fast queues. I'm not like saying, I don't know. It's just such a great plus. So the Monsters Inc. laugh floor thing kind of reminded me of putting the characters as they did in DCA. So that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, everything about Oogie Boogie Bash, I didn't get to attend this year, but everything that I've seen online makes me feel like I have to be there for it next year. They've really upped their game out there.
I would highly suggest it. And not only that, and I don't think you're a diehard Halloween guy, but just Southern California in general for Halloween, if you came out and had a little trip, it's well worth it.
I would like it, yeah. I mean, I would consider myself a diehard Halloween guy. I'm not so big on the haunt, like the extreme haunts. And I feel like California does a lot of that. And
they do, but they have a lot of different options, to be honest. Your holiday, I'm going to make you tell the story. I don't know if, I'm sure I've done it on the show for you, but what's your favorite Halloween tradition, Aaron?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're going for. Yes, so the Christmas thing, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I like to kick off Christmas at the stroke of midnight on October 31st. Music on, Halloween decorations come down, Christmas decorations go up. It's a ritual.
I love it. I laugh every time I think of it. And I literally think of you every Halloween night. I'm like, oh, Merry Christmas, Aaron.
At the stroke of 12.
I love it. I am going to ask, so this was the first year that I know of where they offered I forget what they called it, like a frequent visitor pass to this party, where could you go every night, or was it just select nights?
I believe it's every night except for October 31st.
Okay. So have you noticed lighter than usual crowds? What do you think prompted this pass to repeat visit the party?
Yeah, I don't know. I've only gone the one night this year. It didn't seem especially crowded. I have heard rumors that ticket sales were down this year. I don't know if there's any truth to that. Well, I do know that there's been vocal demand from annual pass holders for an option like this for many years. And I know that Universal Studios, as you know, offers a frequent fear pass for its Halloween Horror Nights event. And that's very successful. And, it's sold, like those tickets were sold in every grocery store in Central Florida. And so maybe Disney just decided to get in on that action. I'm not sure what the strategy was, but I'm glad they're offering it.
Yeah, it's interesting to me just because I always felt like Mickey's Not So Scary pretty much sold out all the time. Although starting in mid-August now, I mean, as big as a Halloween fan I am, I don't want to be going to a Halloween party in mid-August. So maybe they're just like, let's try and fill up those nights. I don't know, but
yeah, and I imagine the number of people who are purchasing this frequent Halloween pass, probably not enough people to make a huge dent either way. The cap on these party events, I imagine, is a little bit flexible.
Yeah, well, they certainly are, because I don't know if you saw, but Oogie Boogie Bash was completely sold out. And all of a sudden, on these dates, we're selling more tickets now. So I'm like, it's going to start getting even more crowded than it was. Yeah.
So I think if like September 9th's party happens to sell out and like, oops, we've also sold 700 of these passes and these people are showing up, like no big deal.
Yeah. Before we move on to some trivia stuff, I do want to mention, we were talking about the Nighttime Spectacular at Magic Kingdom. I do want to mention that there is the Halloween Screams fireworks show over at Disneyland Park. And I mentioned this because there are a couple of things. We do get Jack Skellington as a host, not in puppet form, but as a projected face on a full moon behind the castle, which I think is super cool. And we also get a Flying Zero here, which, now, correct me if I'm wrong, nothing flew on the pixie dust line at Magic Kingdom, right?
Correct, nothing.
Okay, so that was a little surprising. A Zero didn't jump out a window or something, but that's cool. And also, I do want to mention with Halloween Screams, even though it's the same show they've had for many, many years, there are projections now. So they do map project in the typical places at Disneyland Park, which is kind of a nice plus. And it's not even part of the party. It's just part of normal daytime hours, although you'll only get the pyrotechnics on weekends because that's their new thing now.
Yeah.
Ugh, don't even.
Well, I imagine that's a nice happy medium between Hallowishes, because it's still essentially that soundtrack, right?
Kind of. Yeah, there's differences for sure, but yes.
Okay. So yeah,
Similar.
Okay. And then, a marriage of that with sort of the new generation of projection mapping. One more thing I wanted to say about Not So Spooky is that, I think the reason I fell in love with it more than anything else is that, to me, it felt like watching one of those classic Disney Channel Halloween specials in the 80s and 90s. So if you remember, like, Disney's Halloween Treat, that used to run annually, and it felt like that again. We haven't gotten one of those really since Mickey's House of Villains, and even that was tied to an IP. So to have this new thing created for us, it felt very special and very childlike.
Maybe we'll start seeing that stuff again on Disney Plus. I don't know, but Disney Channel used to run a good amount of Halloween specials, and let's face it, like, it wasn't new in the sense of they were creating new content, except for like the little in between the shorts and stuff. They were showing a lot of their old classic content and just kind of mixing it together. But it was fun. Like, I really liked that stuff, and you can find a lot of that stuff on YouTube these days. But yeah.
Yes, but not always in great quality. And so, I think they should actually put like Disney's Halloween Treat, the entirety of the special, on Disney Plus.
Absolutely. Like, I want all of that stuff on Disney Plus, and I really hope that's what we get. And this is one of those situations I kind of feel like, how Disney's finally caught on that, like, oh, people like Hocus Pocus. Oh, people like Newsies. It takes them about 25 years or so. Yeah. Maybe 25 years after Disney Plus launches, they're going to be like, oh, people like that old content. They want MMC, the new Mickey Mouse Club. Yes, we do. We've been shouting it for 25 years. But thank you for finally getting it. That might happen with Disney Plus.
I hope so. And now that like social media is a thing, you would think this would have already happened. But I hope they get these social media reports, and I hope they start to catch on a little more quickly as to what their fans actually care about.
I mean, we're getting the Disney afternoon. That was one of the things that people were shouting off the rooftop. So we'll see. It's fun. In any case, great new additions to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Yeah. And a great new nighttime spectacular. But
one more thing I'll quickly add. And again, to quote my friend Blake Taylor, I thought this was such a great point that he made. For it to be Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, it's great to finally have a big event show in the middle of the evening that stars Mickey Mouse. It really makes it feel like it's his Halloween party. And there's this moment in the show where Mickey's standing in front of a full moon, and he kind of quickly dons a vampire cape, and he says something like, "It's a not so scary Halloween party." So it is that starring moment for him that hasn't been here before.
Good point. I like that. Anything before we get to trivia? I've said that about 20 times now, I feel like. But anything new to one of the most popular things is the Boo-to-You Parade. Anything noteworthy for this year?
I guess nothing to me that was like shocking, but some curious choices. They took that old float that's been around since the 80s that used to be the Pirates of the Caribbean float, and they've stuck Buzz Lightyear on it, but it's like a very Big Thunder looking float. It looks like mountain, like stalagmites, stalactites, and Buzz Lightyear is on top of those, and I don't know why.
So is Jack Sparrow gone from the parade?
No, so Pirates got its own new float a few years ago, so he's still there, but I don't know why Buzz Lightyear is like in a Frontierland setting. Like, you would have thought they would have at least put Woody on that float. Very strange.
That is weird. Man, that's a bizarre choice. Maybe somebody called out sick and They're just like, who's going to fit here? Here we go. Interesting. Anyway, I think that means it's trivia time. Okay, Aaron, do you want to hit me with the trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
I'll hit you first.
Okay,
this time.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So, Hallowishes originally premiered with a longer official title. Do you know what it was?
Happy Hallowishes?
Colon,
a Halloween nighttime fireworks spectacular in the sky.
You're close.
Happy Hallowishes, a...
Think Haunted Mansion.
Happy Hallowishes, think Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion song.
Happy Hallowishes, Grim Grinning Fireworks? I don't know.
Very close. So it's Happy Hallowishes, a grim grinning ghosts spooktacular in the sky.
That is quite a title.
Yes, it is.
Wow. So it went from that to just Hallowishes.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever officially lost
did it
that
officially
title?
do that, or did we just start calling it that?
Yeah.
That's wow. Say it again. Happy Hallowishes, a
grim grinning ghosts spooktacular in the sky.
Alrighty. Well, it lasted a very long time, so that was, it is a little sad it didn't get a proper send-off. They never announced last year, hey, this is the last year for Hallowishes.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't merchandise it like they usually do.
I was going to say they either didn't think of it till after, or they probably didn't know it was going to be the last year, but that's too bad. I want things to have proper send-offs.
Yeah.
In any case, I am curious for you, do you know what was the first year for Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party?
I want to say 1995.
Boom! You are correct. And how many nights was the event?
That I know. One night only the first year. Which
One
is
night. Isn't that crazy?
so crazy.
It's wild. And I'm always curious, like, when these things started as one night events, even the huge things like horror nights and stuff, you hear, it was 3 nights or whatever. I'm like, how much was there? How much change was there? Because one night, you're not going to invest that much time, effort, and money into a one-night event. So it was probably just like, hey, there are characters and here's some candy. And that's about it.
Probably. And, it's a shame. I don't think there's a lot of information about these earlier events. I mean, it was a time when, sort of pre-internet or at the dawn of the internet, and the fan community wasn't then what it is now. And for these one-off, one-night events, I just don't know that there was a whole lot of chronicling going on. So I've never seen like a detailed play-by-play account of what went down that first year at Mickey's Not So Scary.
Yeah.
I know there were fireworks. Bonus trivia question for you, Jeff. Do you know the name of the fireworks show that ran that very first year at Not So Scary, because it was not Hallowishes.
Mickey's Not So Scary Fireworks.
No.
I said it with confidence, though, didn't I?
You sure did. It's a little bit of a trick question. So it was just Fantasy in the Sky, which was the same fireworks show that was running during regular park hours, but they had a special Halloween tag that was kind of hosted by the evil queen or the wicked witch from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Did they call it like Fantasy in the Sky, Halloween Spectacular, or like did they change the title at all?
To my knowledge, it was just Fantasy in the Sky.
Interesting. Well, in any case, I love Halloween. I love the Disney Halloween parties. I'm so happy I got to discuss this one with you since I didn't get to experience it for myself this year. So thank you for coming on the show. And why don't you let folks know about your recently relaunched podcast, as well as anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I have had a podcast since 2005, nearly 15 years, called Zippity Doo Pod. But I recently relaunched it, rebranded, new name, so it's now called On Main Street with Aaron Wallace. The idea is to be sort of an in-depth look at all different aspects of the Disney fandom, the Disney company, Disney culture. And in this first premiere episode, I take a look at 7 different Disney songs from 7 decades in Disney history. Each one in depth, the history behind the song, the sort of hidden stories, the secret appeal, and why we love it. So you can find that on iTunes, the podcast app of your choice, or on my website, aaronwallaceonline.com.
Great. And I will say I listened to that first episode, and there's really interesting conversation on there about just the history of some of those songs. And it's amazing. We hear them all the time, but you don't necessarily know what it's from or how it originated and stuff. So great episode. Highly suggest checking it out. And since it is Halloween season, you might not be plugging it, but I'm going to do it for you. Hocus Pocus and Focus, the book. You've got to check it out. Same place, AaronWallaceOnline.com, correct?
Yes. Thanks, Jeff.
Excellent. And of course, folks, we're, believe it or not, we're getting toward the end of 2019 and it's almost 2020, which means you need a new calendar. So today I'm officially announcing the Disney Coast to Coast 2020 calendars are available. Not only the wall calendar, but this year there is a desk calendar as well. I really love the desk calendar. So go to DisneyCoastToCoast.com. Check it out there if you want to see what it looks like, and you can place your order as well to get your 2020 calendars. Can you believe it's almost 2020?
I know it's going by so quickly, but I'm excited about this. I love me a desk calendar, so I'm going to get that for sure.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for the support. Appreciate it. And of course, folks, if you're tired of just listening to podcasts and you want to make one of your very own, you're just not sure how, and you're intimidated by all of these different parts of it, go to youcanpodcastnow.net for some free information. There's a free webinar and a free ebook there, so check it out at youcanpodcastnow.net. And other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.